Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Happy Spot. My name is Jack Thomas. I've been fortunate growing up, 4 generations, New York City, family, business, intergenerational wealth. As we look at the news today, we look at Donald Trump. This isn't about to be about politics. It is about to be about humanity and human score. So today we are fortunate and blessed. We have Shakira Johnson. She is a social leader. She's on our third show, New York City podcast. We're putting this worldwide. I had the good blessing of meeting her at an evening. Both of us had gone to a political event. Neither one of us are political. She was there representing and supporting other leaders, women, strong. And I was there supporting friends of mine that were there supporting women, leaders, strong. And that's what the month of April in the happy spot. If you think of April, we have coming up April, we have Easter, we have Judaic holiday, Passover, and let's not forget 420 for everybody to celebrate green. But there's a variety of different holidays that are going on. It's the holiday of humanity and keeping score. And at the Happy Spot, we have partnered up with a company out of Europe to help corporations in America to track scorekeeping. We follow a system written by a group called Global Class. It's an international book. And the book focuses on how do we stay local, focus local, and scale global. Shakira Johnson gets it. We have contracted and extended an offer with her company. We are going to have 30 professionals that are employed at the Happy Spot and work through the training mechanisms she's created. On the same side, we have Clementina Louise Esposito. Clementina is an international coach in writing. She is a college professor. But the part about Clementina that we've gotten to know at the Happy Spot is her comfort zone of being who she is as a woman, as a leader. No nonsense. If you want to know what she's thinking, she'll let you know. But she comes at it with warmth, with generosity, of kindness. And so we are fortunate, Clementina, representing Clementina Collective, and looking at the book Shakira has written, and really, how do we help heal our society? I'm sitting in New York City today. I'm on 44th Street. I'm in Manhattan, not too far where a young man decided to murder a CEO of an insurance company. I can't tell you how many different people I speak to about vigilantism and how uncomfortable it makes all of us. So we're not going to touch the topic. We're going to touch the topic that when we get really sad, we all call our mom, our aunt, our big sister, but we're looking for leaders that are women in leadership. And I'm grateful. I'm going to step aside. I'll come back later, but I'm turning the show today, Shakira, third show, helping us promote the world. If you ladies, right, will just take over the universe and help the male egos that have kind of clouded the world, I really am grateful for the two of you. I'm going to duck out of here and turn the floor. Shakira, please lead us to sanity. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jack. It's such an honor to be here again for, like you said, show 3. Wow. Really so happy and grateful for this opportunity. Thank you, Jack and Anshar, to host again the Happy Spot. Jack, you're absolutely right. We are definitely in the midst of a transition globally, going from the masculine to the divine feminine. It will be one of love, light, energy, joy, and peace. Clementina, I'm so excited for this conversation. I feel like it is going to be just amazing and dynamic. We have so much to talk about, so we're just going to hop right in.
I said, let's do it. I'm ready.
Oh, we can see
I'm here for the shift. I'm ready for the dynamic conversation.
Clementina, are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can. Okay, you were frozen, but you're not now. I'm so excited. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and let the listeners know who you are, about your collective and why you started it.
So I'm Clementina Esposito. I'm the founder of the Clementina Collective, where no one writes alone. Everyone values the power of a well-told story, and ugly truths turn out beautiful in the end. I decided to start it because I left academia. I was a professor pretty much since I graduated college, and I left after my first son was born. I took a 1-year leave 17 years ago, and I never went back. I decided that I wanted to start my own writing business where I could do what I felt like was the most powerful thing I was doing in my classroom during office hours, which was connecting with my students on a human level, and helping them solve the problems in their lives, which were mostly them, through writing. So I realized that without academic constraints, I could probably do more good. So I hung out my shingle, and what I had no idea about, what I was most surprised by, was that I didn't know I was asking for a spiritual awakening when I did that. But I got one. But I got one anyway. So yeah.
And I'm thinking life has never been the same.
No, and that's good.
So in the other two episodes that I was on, I talked a bit about my spiritual awakening. And for those of you who want to learn more, I would invite you to listen to those. But Clementina, why don't you tell us about yours and what it looked like before you went into it, when you went in it, and then after you came out?
Well, I don't know that I'm out.
You know what? And as I was saying it, I was like, I don't think you even ever get out.
I
It's
know,
almost
I
like
know
you
what
just, it
you mean.
evolves. It
I know
evolves.
what you mean. I know what you mean. I
Mhm.
mean, and there's always, right, there's always a, I mean, there's always a selfish motivation behind things we do. And I think it's important that we also be honest about that. So, I wanted it all. I wanted to be able to have time with my children. I wanted to be able to work, and I missed, sort of like the life of the mind, even though I really enjoyed being a mother and really becoming, it was probably the first time in my life that I became really still and present and wasn't like striving and ambitious and all the things. And so I thought, I'll do this thing and I'll be able to create my own time and I'll be able to, and what I didn't realize is that, much like I would have to guide my writers through, to be a writer and to have a writing business requires a tremendous amount of authenticity and alignment. And so, as you said, I mean, I had the pleasure of reading your book before the show, and you asked me which keys resonated most with me, and I chose choice and truth. And I think part of that was because, when you, in the part about choice, you say, we all have to take responsibility for our lives. Right. And we have to take radical responsibility, and we have to realize that everything in our lives is there because we made it there. And right. And
All of
that's
it, the
all of
good,
it.
the
Yeah.
bad, the
Yeah.
beautiful,
Right.
the ugly. We are
Right.
actively choosing it. And because source just is and doesn't really operate in the sense of polarity in the same way we do, or duality, it's like whatever you want, you can have. Whatever
Mm-hmm.
you want, you can have. Whatever your choices dictate is what you have.
Yeah. And you don't, and then that gets us all into, but you might not know, you might think you know what you want, but you might not know what that entails or what that's going to cost you. And so I think, it was a process of, having to move with, radical honesty in my life and say, like, what relationships weren't working, who was I breaking bread with that was not in alignment with my highest good. We see these neat little memes in the personal development space, like, oh, you're the sum of the 5 people you hang around with. But what does that really mean? What does that really mean? And so when you really start to dig deep into these questions, you're going to find answers. You might not like them, but you're going to find answers. And then, if you really want the life you say you want, and if what's really important, what you say is important to you is really important to you, you're going to have to make some hard choices. Right. And so, I think that is, and they're very connected, I think, choice and truth, because, every person has an individual truth. And this happens all the time, when I work with people who are writing personal stories or recovering from traumatic childhoods, they'll say, well, my sister said it was different, or I'm worried about what this person is going to think, or, and, everybody's truth is different.
And that is the power of choice. And when we come back from commercial break, we'll talk more about choice and we'll talk more about truth. But, you hit on so many things. One I want to just come back to is, do you even know what you want? Do you even know what you want, right? Because if you're unclear, then your choices reflect that, because they're random and ratchet, to quote a mentor of mine, right? However, when we are focused and intentional and operating in purpose, then our choices align with that. During my second spiritual awakening, after the first time when I was in my early 20s and I had a spiritual awakening, and it was so intense that I literally said, God, stop, because it was just what a doozy at that time, right? But the second time, and I'm so grateful that I had another time, I was walking outside and Source said, what do you want? Whatever you want, we'll give you. And I had no answer. I didn't even know how to answer what did I in fact want. I knew that I was frustrated and I didn't like how things were, but I didn't really have an answer to that. Clementina, when we get back, I want to also talk about how this impacted you, not only personally, but professionally, what it meant for your business. Because what I'm thinking is that because of this spiritual awakening and those questions that you asked yourself and answered and made some tough choices, is how you even ended up with the work that you're doing and being able to make and create such an impact, locally, regionally, and globally. So we will go to commercial break, and when we come back, we will talk more about choice and truth and how it impacts us in our lives. Thank you.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant, and on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, Thursdays 12 noon on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a high-achieving, growth-oriented leader? Are you interested in developing your authentic leadership while creating a healthy, inclusive workplace? Hi, I'm Dr. Mira Brancu, host of The Hard Skills on talkradio.nyc at 5 p.m. Eastern on Tuesdays, where we discuss how leaders develop the hard skills needed to make a greater impact. We interview experts, have live coaching, and tackle these challenges. Listen to The Hard Skills on Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Happy Spot. I am your host for today, Shakira Monet Johnson, founder of Maple and Monroe, a global social impact think and do tank, and author of Over the Veil, 21 Keys to Raise Your Frequency and Thrive in the Golden Age. Today, I have guest Clementina, who is founder of the Clementina Collective. And before the break, we were just talking about her spiritual awakening, some of the tower moments that came from it, and then moving into how that impacted her from business. So Clementina, welcome back. Before the break, we talked some about your spiritual awakening, but share how it really impacted your business or career.
Yeah, I think, business, career, life, I think it's all, I think, when you get really, really authentic and you get aligned with your purpose, it becomes harder and harder to make these neat little categories, right? But I mean, I think you're absolutely right. I know for a certain I wouldn't be able to come to my clients' works with the amount of compassion, empathy, understanding, knowledge, and guidance that I do. Had I not been through, had I not been walking the talk, and doing it myself. I mean, there are all kinds of books that people write. Even books like yours that I call, business books, right? It's a 21 keys, and there's a story at the beginning, which gives us a glimpse into, who you are and how you think. But it's the essence. It's already a distilled, it's distilled wisdom for easy consumption for your readers, which is awesome, which is what you want from a good leader, right? And, we don't always get a glimpse into, the messy ways that you get that wisdom. But right? And you said in your book that
Absolutely.
right? You said in your, you say this thing that's so profound and like, yes, right? But how did you, and you say that you were gifted with a download, about, which is great. I mean, when that happens, that's amazing. A kind of transmission from source, and that's wonderful. But just knowing you even as recently as I do, I can see in the way that you speak and the way that you are that, you have won these hard truths also, right? But when you're going through it and writing, a lot of times writing books brings up a very messy process for people of, trying to, find their voice, is the common, way to say it. And I think everyone's voice is inside them. I don't think it's something we have to go looking for to find, but I do think that over time, we have constraints put upon us, that we have to remove, and we have to do the work to remove, and, subtract, and as you say in your book, a lot of times that involves people and places. So how it affected my business is, I mean, I wouldn't be worth my salt if I wasn't in alignment and if I wasn't in integrity with myself. And so this spiritual awakening, this one, it was also my second. My first one also happened in my 20s. And I too am grateful for a second one, because the second time around, you're like, oh, I know what this is.
Yeah.
The first time I was like, oh God, I'm going to die.
The first time I was like, what is happening to me? And stop it right now, because I'm trying to party and bullshit. Okay. Like, I don't even know what's going on,
Right.
but I'm just not really here for it. And then you get the kind of mundane, profane world, and you're like, oh, this is very painful and very dense and very difficult and like all of the things. So the second time around, it very much feels like, oh, I'm glad to be done with that. It's almost like you did it so you don't miss any of it, but at the same time, like you said, this I'm not going back. I'm not asking for this to go away. It's such a gift. Clementina, let's go back for a moment to your first awakening in your 20s. What did that look like?
Well, I was in a freak accident. So that just kind of, plummeted me into a hell I was not prepared for. And, in that hell, I had only myself. So, it was very clarifying. And I think pain medications helped, you know, bring on, all kinds of, altered states. And yeah, I realized I had to question a lot of, my beliefs. And you talk about this in your book too. It was really, the first one was all about, and again, this is another kind of truth, but it's not under the label of truth in your book. It's like, I had to start questioning things I believed. Like, so for example, I was like, oh my God, I was having these conversations with God, and I realized that I believed in a punishing God, and I hadn't chosen that. That somehow I believed in a punishing God, and I believed that I was being punished. So I could only start to heal when I started to work with that belief, which is actually not what I believe. That was a belief that was passed on to me, through Catholicism and
Right.
right. And I was like, I actually don't believe that. Right. I was like, I really, and it was amazing that, overturning some of these beliefs, while I was in a position where I was trying to heal, I realized that, and that's also when I started to realize that, my whole life existed between, and everyone's does, right? It's between your ears, right? It's so much about your mindset and your thoughts and your beliefs that influence things you don't even realize are influencing. But I was naive in the sense that when I got through, when I fully recovered and left the relationship that I was in, and actually once I healed my belief, I realized that, call it God, call it intuition, call it whatever you want, some source was whispering to me and I was not listening. Right. I was not listening. I was not listening. I didn't know how to leave things. I didn't know how to leave relationships.
And when you don't listen, be prepared for the biggest face plant, gut punch.
Yes. Yes. So
flashing, just be prepared. It is brutal.
Yeah. So becoming, I wasn't in an unhealthy relationship when the accident happened, and the accident made it very, very clear. I couldn't delude myself anymore. So healing from the relationship, healing from the accident, meant eventually leaving the relationship. And, when I got through that, when I got through the healing, I was foolish enough to think like, I felt profoundly changed. And as you said before, life was never the same. And even I was so young, and I found really for the rest of my life after, I had things, ways of thinking and being that other people didn't have. And without dropping the story, and I didn't really know how to say it like I just said it without dropping, the gory details, which you didn't always want to do. I felt like people looked at me sort of strangely, like, how is she freakishly non-judgmental? How does she have so much compassion? And like looking on the surface, you could make a lot of assumptions about, who I was, not knowing, what I had been through. And I foolishly thought like, okay, well, I got done with that early. Now I'm going to go on with my productive life,
Surprise.
Yeah, and so by now I'm swinging a little bit the other way. Like, yeah, I don't know if this really ever ends. I think you get these reprieves, every once in a while. It's like, yeah.
And then it revs up. No, you're so right. It doesn't end. And that's really, even you talk so much about the book, and I shared it with you, and I'm so grateful that you read it. But one of the things that it talks about in really going over the veil, and what we mean by going over the veil is really going over the veils of these blockages and beliefs and things that are actually lowering your frequency, these habits, these beliefs, these actions, and really ascending into a higher level of consciousness and thought process, and being. And so, but what it explains in the book is that it doesn't really end, it just transforms over time, and to your, the beginning part can be very intense because it's like, things keep being revealed to you, and you're coming, I say, moving from belief to knowing. At this point, I don't really believe things, I know them to be true. There are just some things I know to be true, because of the download, and also my understanding of truth, which we'll get into more after the break, just what that even really means, right? But that being said, just in understanding that it's ever evolving, and it's almost like you enter a portal or a gate, and then there's that, right? It changes you in profound ways over time. And there are ripples, but what I will say is that the longer you're on the other side of it, the more you're able to ride that wave, if that makes sense, and understand. And also, you have such a much more profound love of self and trust of source, that no matter what, everything is okay. At this point in the journey, I'm really in a place of everything always works out for me, and no matter what, I'm going to be good. I'm really in a good place with that. Whereas before, I don't necessarily always feel that way, but you're much more trusting down the road of yourself and source, that no matter what, everything will be okay. And that alone, that mindset alone, creates the transformation, to really just be able to better flow with life, understand life. And in some of the other podcasts, we talk more about non-duality and things of that nature. But as you also raise your frequency higher, you move into a space of non-duality, which really is the Godhead, just understanding things just are. There really isn't necessarily even a good and a bad. In a low density form of polarity on a 3D, yes, but as you move up to 5D, that kind of slips away, and in 12D, it doesn't even exist. So we're going to go to commercial break, and then I'm going to read a passage from key number 9, which is choice, and then we're going to talk a little bit about that. Thank you, and stay tuned.
Hey everybody, it's Tommy D, the nonprofit sector connector, coming at you from my attic. Each week here on talkradio.nyc, I host the program Philanthropy in Focus. Nonprofits impact us each and every day, and it's my focus to help them amplify their message and tell their story. Listen each week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on talkradio.nyc.
Hi, I'm Linda Marcanico. The A Train to Sedona is a memoir about my journey to love and compassion. It's also the name of my new broadcast on Wednesdays at 12 noon. When we are spiritual, we embrace possibilities and ideas, which strengthen our mind, body, spirit, health, and wisdom. On the A Train to Sedona broadcast, I plan to interview guests who embrace these expansive practices. Join us on Wednesdays at 12 noon on Talk Radio New York City.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Happy Spot. I am your host for today, Shakira Johnson, founder of Maple and Monroe Global Social Impact Think and Do Tank, and author of Over the Veil, 21 Keys to Raise Your Frequency and Thrive in the Golden Age. Today's guest is Clementina Esposito, founder of the Clementina Collective, and we've been chatting about spiritual awakenings, choice, truth, non-duality, and everything in between. Welcome back, Clementina.
Thank you.
So, let me tell a quick story about how this book even came to be. Clementina, you mentioned that it was a download, and I do say that, and that is the truth, in that I was walking, I had intentionally made the choice to walk to my meeting, to meet with the COO of an organization that was my client. And I said, I'm going to walk. While I was walking there, very clearly, Spirit said, when you get there, write a list of all the things that you've done in your journey over the veil, right? Like write a list, just write a list of all the things that you've done. And I said, okay, no problem, I'll do it. I get to the meeting is great. It's so great that once my client is ready to leave, I'm folding up my laptop and I'm about to walk out. The client goes to the door, comes back and says, you know what? I'm having a hard time sleeping. Is there anything that you can help me out with? And I was like, oh, the list. So I said, oh, let me, get back to you. So he leaves. I open up my laptop and literally this list, these keys just blow out. They just come. I'm just there's no draft, there's no nothing. It's just comes out literally as I'm like doing the last key. The barista of the coffee shop says, we're closing and that's it. I close it down, it's done. Later on, originally, I thought that it was going to be a list that I just shared with my clients in confidence. Something that, for example, that COO says, oh, well, I need help with this, and I would just send them the list just to support people privately. And then when one day when I was having tea with a friend of mine who is a leader, she said, no, that's not a list, it's a book. You have to make it a book. And then the process of changing it from a list to a book, that's a doozy that I'm sure that you understand.
I do understand. I understand it. And it's a doozy.
And it was so much really, though, about just me, about me and my discipline and my choices and those things. It was the book created its own personal discovery for myself, and having to write it and flesh out that list and go through the entire process.
Well, that's the best. When that happens, I mean, that's the best. A lot of people want to have everything figured out, but if there is no process of discovery, the reader feels that process of discovery, and that's important. I think it's an important under talked about quality of a book.
You're spot on, but in the process, I've been feeling frustrated, or like I'm not moving fast enough, or things of that nature. But as the time passes, things happen that actually develop the book in so much more profound, beautiful ways. Even I've gotten additional downloads that are now in the book since, the initial transmission. And so, even this art, if you're watching, you can see this art that's behind me, but the art in the book is art that I created almost a year later after kind of that initial download. That was such a point of frustration. I ended up lost in the woods. Spoiler alert. Like, I ended up literally lost in the woods, in the mountains, by myself, on my way to like a reception. And because of that experience of me being lost in the woods by myself and that whole thing, it ended up creating this art. But it came out of the the kind of push and pull in the black and the white of the whole experience of me just getting to, which was just to be, you know, a lovely ladies' night, that created that. And having that conversation with my art director, she was like, well, you have to put the art in the book. Like you have to put the story in the book, and you have to do that. So you're right. Over time, the development of it actually has added color and flavor and nuance to it, and elevated it from really what was just meant to be a list for my leader clients and friends to something that's now, I'm very clear, meant to impact the world. So let's talk about choice, which is key 9. At least in this version, it's key 9. Every choice you make pulls you towards or away from an infinite amount of timelines. We live in a holographic reality co-created by you, source, and the group consciousness, yet your free will governs which timeline you experience. However, illusions of powerlessness perpetuate mental slavery, causing people to relinquish their power to structures and others. Look at your life. Accept that you made the choices that shaped it to be what it is, good, bad, or indifferent. Purge negative emotions, extending grace to yourself and others as you realize you created from your present state. For those seeking a different outcome, examine your choices, big and small, and start choosing differently. It can help to begin at the end goal, reverse engineering the steps required. Soon you'll face tough decisions that become defining moments. If not mindful, these moments can become roadblocks as you realize certain people, places, and behaviors must be released for your next timeline. Proceed with courage, releasing what no longer serves you from a place of gratitude. If you feel stuck or lost, speak to source and say, help, help, and share your request, even if you don't know what help you need. Acknowledging your confusion is a powerful start. Because we have free will, source won't stop us from self-sabotaging or harming the collective. Operate with wisdom, remembering each choice ripples outward. That is from the first section of choice. We do, in fact, live in a free world reality, a free choice reality. That is our free will. That is the thing that we do have in this experience. And because of that, that means that we can have hate or love. We can have passion and pleasure. We can have misery and everything in between. Clementina, you selected choice as one of the keys that really stood out to you. Why did you select it? And share what stood out to you about it.
Yeah, I chose it because well, I had really hard choices to make, you know, and I think, you know, before the break when I'm going to come back around to answering that. Before the break when you were talking about, you know, the second time around, you know, I even started thinking, you know, there's a mastery, you know, that comes with living. And when you start to realize that, you know, some of these components that you talk about, both, you know, from daily habits, but also how we engage with a spiritual awakening. You know, I see people that I can recognize are on a similar journey, but maybe farther along on the path than myself. And I watch them confront things even preemptively, you know, or create rituals that, you know, sort of make space and time and intention around, you know, what do I have to let go of that isn't serving me, or so on and so forth. You know, in my case, you know, it was really easy. I was, you know, I'm finishing my own book, and you know, some of the things that came up for me while I was writing it were things that I had to, you know, confront my family about. It was as if, you know, they had a perception of my life that wasn't true at all to me.
Mm.
And, standing up for myself, meant the possibility that they wouldn't, go along with it, which is what happened. And I had to be, courageous, as you say, and strong, and let people go. But, and that's the thing a lot of people don't talk about, with spiritual awakenings is, you lose people. And when you raise your frequency, you lose people. And when I'm the most well rested, and, when my frequency is highest, when I'm able to care for myself as much as I know that I need care, I can look at things. It's just energies don't match anymore.
It just doesn't match anymore.
And right. And things just fall away. Things can just fall away. And through the process of doing it, I have discovered, more grace around it. So I think that's the reason why choice resonated with me so much, is I really think that's a big key that people don't really always understand. And when we were talking earlier, I can see the arc. Maybe it's because it's part of what I need to do when I create books with people is, what's the arc of this transformation? But when we look at our lives and we think that things are just happening to us, we're still in the victim consciousness. And to transcend that, we have to take radical responsibility, and we have to make hard choices, and we have to realize. And I will never forget the moment that I finally had a therapist that I was talking to, and I said, but do I really have to give this up to get that? Do I really? And I remember he was very clear and very, very.
Can't I have my cake and eat it
too? Can I? Right? And he said, I can promise you that, the book that you want to write and the leader that you want to be in the world, you cannot be if you stay here. You cannot, these two things don't go together. And it was heartbreaking. It was crushing. It was crushing. And especially when, and my gosh, I already know I don't claim to be, the most like evolved, as if I've reached some final state. I have a lot more evolving, to do. But I can, just like I can see people who are ahead on the path, there are also people who refuse to get on the path, or who, don't want to.
And that's their choice.
And that's their
choice. That's their
choice.
And
Absolutely.
those on the path have to have grace for them.
Yes. So I think choice stood out to me because not only can I relate to it from my place, but I can see that a lot of people have a hard time with that one. They don't see that they still don't want to see that everything in their life has been their choice, and that they have choices, to make, where they can make a choice that would take them from one way of being to another, way of being.
Absolutely. They're choosing the pain.
Yes.
They're choosing the pain. I mean, you mentioned it a couple of breaks back where you talked about how a part of the current conditioning of this experience that we're having is that things must be painful, and they must be hard, and they must be difficult. There's like this, and it's almost like the more painful it is, somehow it's the better, or there's hazing. There's all these different things that, it's like we feel like if it's not this way, then people almost don't value it, right? Like if they get it easy, it's almost like they don't even value it, or something like that. So, there's a conditioning here that people want to feel like things have to be hard, and they have to be painful, and it has to be difficult, and to the point that if it's not, they will create it.
Yes, absolutely.
Literally, they will create the pain, the
Absolutely.
difficulty. They will sabotage things. They will make them hard. I often tell my children, I say, we don't have to make things hard, right? Like when I'm working with people and things, I say, we don't have to make things hard. We can take the easy path. We don't have to make it hard. And I say there's more than enough hard things, choices down the road that we don't have to make this hard, right? And so that's the thing. That choice that people want things to be almost tumultuous to the point that, again, if things just start going too good, some people feel like it's boring, they don't know what to do, and then they start doing things to just ruin it and create that chaos. There's an addiction to those frequencies.
There is
frequencies
addiction.
of
You know,
mind, those
there's
frequencies of
also,
hate,
yeah.
of anger. And for some of us, you kind of spoke to your family. For some of us, it's so embedded in our DNA, it's so coded ancestrally for generations that we literally feel addicted to these emotions and frequencies of pain, anger, hurt,
The way
jealousy,
we've always done
guilt.
it.
And that if you don't have it, then you almost feel like you're missing it and you have to create it. Or you kind of alluded to it, is that, well, if you're this, free child going around smiling with joy and all these things, and your family is not operating in that frequency, it's like you're doing something wrong, and they could even, pull you back down into frequency.
Yeah, that's a real, it's the crabs in the bucket, right? And, if you put a bunch of crabs in the bucket, and one crab tries to get out, the other crabs will bring it back in. I mean, it's a real phenomenon, right? But they use that a lot of times to explain these family dynamics, right? Where, and it's kind of like, it's like corporate too, right? Like, this is the way we've always done it. And we don't even realize that, we have choices and we can decide. And, it's,
Absolutely.
yeah, it's, their addiction is involved, habit, just conditioning. Yeah.
And you mentioned this too, and then we'll go to break. You mentioned just the power of the people around you, and letting them go and letting that go. It's the people, places, things, and ideas. The choice of letting them go to higher, and being okay with it. In the beginning, it was painful to have to let people go. Now it's
Yeah,
not.
you're like,
Now it's like we're no longer in alignment. We have
see,
creative differences. It's okay.
it is okay, right?
It's okay. It's for the best. In the end, it's for the best. I'm no longer afraid of letting people go, right? And that's a part, non-attachment. It's about a
Non-attachment.
mastery in life, non-attachment. No attachment to anything, but it creates blessings and abundance all around. So we're going to take our commercial break now. When we come back, we will talk about truth. Stay tuned.
Were you an essential worker during the pandemic? If you needed to learn stages of epilepsy, did you depend on advocates? Did you use new innovations to cope with mental and neurological issues? Maintaining high quality of life and keeping good mental health are what we all strive for. I'm Frank R. Harrison, host of Frank About Health, and each week top healthcare influencers, professionals, and innovators answer these questions and more. Stay tuned on Thursdays at 5 p.m. on talkradio.nyc, and I will continue to be frank about health with all of you.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant, and on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, Thursdays 12 noon on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Hello and welcome back to the Happy Spot. I am your guest host, Shakira Johnson, author of Over the Veil, and I have the divine Clementina. If you could see her, she is divine in this shade of orange, yellow. It's very beautiful, very radiant. I have her with me today. Welcome back, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Shakira.
So, one of the other keys that you said really resonated with you was key 10, which is truth. And when we think about truth, many of the things that you think you know or believe may be factually inaccurate or incomplete. Often these mistruths are intentional, used to mislead, manipulate, or prevent ascension. Other times they may arise from ignorance, false memories, or incompetence. Any external source of information other than direct download is at best a narrative or perception of truth. Even downloads need time to be fully processed and decoded. In our current reality, master communicators and wordsmiths are employed to shape narratives and build false histories, leading to widespread belief in lies. If you were not an eyewitness, it is best to focus on larger themes of stories or retellings instead of taking every detail as fact. Dogmatic conflicts over details often cause confusion and division. Meditate, research, contemplate, and test the information shared with you so you can form your own understanding. When you think you know a thing, dig deeper. Practice critical thinking and ask for truth to be revealed. Clementina, you selected truth as one of your favorite keys. Share as we get ready to conclude our podcast why you selected that and how you feel like it can help those in business.
Yeah, I mean, I think I see it all the time in my work. One of the things I get to do is, gently encourage people to tell the truth. They don't think they're lying. They sometimes don't know they're lying. And I think the truth carries a frequency. I know for me, when I read the truth, when I hear the truth, I can cry. Maybe I laugh. It carries a frequency, and you can't deny that the energy doesn't lie. And I think that it can be hard. As I said, there's lying. I'm not even going there, but I'm talking about even a person who has no intent to lie can sometimes be lying to themselves or not telling the whole truth or trying to protect someone and I don't think there's any, we talk all these things that business leaders today are talking about, authenticity and vulnerability and, that are so important. And none of those are possible without knowing your truth. And I love your suggestions for finding the truth because they're varied and it's a wide net. And those are all, tactics I imply and encourage my people to use when they're trying to find their truth, again, I think writing is a great place to work it out, and try to discover it. And, there's, as you said, it's important to fact check, to research, to meditate, but it's also important, people will try to take you away from your own truth. And the world will take you away from your own truth. And so it's really, really, and without that, what do you have? I mean, talk about choices. How do you make a choice when you're not acting in truth? When you don't know your own truth. And I would have to say, I don't think there's anything really more important than being able to stand in your truth, and from there, be able to recognize that someone else who is actually, I have two sons, they're very different. Sometimes, we're all right there and everybody's perception is different, slightly different. And I can respect that, each of them filters every single scenario through their little self. Their little selves are different. Right. And so that doesn't mean one of them is lying. It means, but from that, I can see where, you know, how they see the world, where their values are, where their hurts have been, where, you know, where they want to make the world a better place. You know, I can see so much from that. And everybody has a right to their own truth. And, you know, for some of us, especially if we come from places where we were gaslit or emotionally manipulated or, you know, told our truth didn't matter, you know, it can take a lot of practice and it can feel like a really scary thing to stand in our truth. So it's not a given, and it's so, so important. So I want to thank you for encouraging people to do all these amazing things, like make good choices and find their truth.
Well, it's a blessing, and thank you so much for joining me in this conversation. Jack is back, and he is going to take us out. Clementina, really quick, where can people find you? How can people find you?
At the Clementina Collective, and they can, all my info is there. They can search it up and email me, clementina@clementinacollective.com.
And if anybody wants to learn more about Over the Veil, you can visit overtheveil.com. Jack, take us home.
Ladies, I'm so grateful. You touch upon so many things that I envisioned at the Happy Spot. I'm sitting today at 44th Street and 9th Avenue in New York City. And I remember as a kid driving with my dad on a truck, going into the places where you could buy tools and equipment on how to fix things with cars. And how I see the world today from a global perspective is fixing the mind, the brain via truth. And so I'm just going to read a little bit of some things that are where we are in the Happy Spot. And it's the Happy Spot. It's where your physical reality, honest potential, and soul's purpose are one. The future of work is happy. We at the Happy Spot, we help executives change employee behavior. So we made an announcement earlier. Shakira, we would like to contract 30 of your workbooks. We're going to be working with the Happy Spot. We're measuring a human score. We're creating a benchmark. I've been working on this for about 14 years. And underwriting the happiness, we are just grateful and blessed to have the exchange. The two of you did not know each other really prior till today, but you come from two different vantage points of across the water. One's in Jersey, one's in New York. But as women, as leaders, you come globally and say the thing that we as men need to hear in our controlling dynamic and allowing women to lead so we can learn from you. So grateful to have you here. The vision for the Happy Spot, it's global behavior change, one executive at a time. And we're going to be rolling out an Ask Anshar. He's my partner. He is an international behaviorist, and there'll be further ongoings. I just want to say thank you, ladies, for just being yourselves and really resonating with your children, because it is the intergenerational oral wealth that really is important for the group that I'm working with. And just hearing that, thank you so much. We're going to turn one final piece. Shakira, if you have one final thing that you'd like to lead us with today, and we'll move through the end of our show.
Really, it's time for everyone to make a choice. The time has come. We see in the world where we are. You cannot turn away. You cannot put your head in the sand. It has reached critical mass. And that is just really calling and pushing everyone to make their choice. You get your choice, but it is time to make it. I invite you to join me and Clementina and Jack and others over the veil. And you see the energy and the frequency that we are on. And we are happy to guide you on that process. So namaste and God bless.
Namaste.